In this session, I will show you a variety of quick tips and techniques. Let's call this our Kung Fu modeling techniques. So let's start with a basic object. This is also hairdryer basic surface creases and flows, in case you look for the model. And I have here my very basic handle and, for example, the top part. And I actually now in Blender would like to sculpt embedded transition. So we can't really blend like in Fusion. So if we want to have a nice transition, we might have to model it. So here's one way how to do it. You see, for example, here that while this actually looks pretty ugly, so the point is not beauty, just to show you the concept. How actually everything nicely flows. So how did I do that? It's actually pretty simple. It all comes down to the amount of points you have. So you see there I have 4 faces. They nicely line up actually in my situation with where the handle is. So I can press E to extrude, but before I do this, where is my screencast? There. So E to extrude, and I can drag this one down. And now I will clean this one up. I will S and Z and 0, straighten everything out, scale it. Maybe take a look at the profile. This should be a little bit forward. They can actually go in, they can go in, they can go in there. And honestly, working just with a full model is way too much work. So let's delete this one, and then we will create a mirror along the Y. Let's rotate it, apply the rotation, mirror first, there. Okay, good. So this is now what we have. It's pretty easy to simply maybe continue extruding parts down. I, by accident, built in, you can see there are some internal points, so hasta la vista. They're gone. And building this down in a straight way allows me to maybe explore some shapes while this is easy to manipulate, left and right, no, up, down, very straightforward. Maybe this one I want to shift, so I can press spacebar, shear, and then Y for the Y axis, so up, down. Move my mouse a little bit, and then you see it doesn't rotate, it really moves the points nicely. Otherwise, shear, whoops, no, shear is then working on the x-axis or y-axis. Okay, good. So with this done, now actually I could go ahead and rotate this one and try to position it to where maybe I might like this one to be. Maybe a little look, and yeah, and maybe we can move these up a little bit, move this one to there, there, try to refine the flow a little bit. Okay, good. But you see, the problem is with a very low amount of points, there isn't really much I can sculpt. So, what else can I do? Well, I have this mesh and I have a sub-D modifier. If I, for example, apply a modifier of view 1, click apply, you see now I have a lot more points I can actually work with. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 points. Okay. So I could, for example, create myself maybe a circle, 10 vertices, 1 centimeter. Let's move this one down. Let's take a look. Okay, maybe stretch this and maybe rotate this one into the position we need. E and extrude, move it move this one up, maybe scale this a little bit, E and extrude there. For example, build a very basic model. Again, this is not meant to look nice. I quickly only try to show you different techniques how you could approach this. Okay, so what I did basically here was a vertex match. I have exactly 10 vertices there, and I have 10 vertices in the upper part. And let's say this one is awesome and good enough. And we want to join these two. So select the handle, select the main body, Control J or Object Join, puts them into the same mesh container. And now I can actually delete these 2 points, select this loop, again 20 vertices, so 10 10, that's important. You can't make a blend from 9 to 7 or 15 to 2. And then spacebar, bridge, click. Let's see, maybe one additional cut, maybe blend surface, maybe one more. Okay, smoothness, maybe we can soften this a little bit. Yeah, okay. Let's take a look from the bottom. And it looks kind of like chunk. So we just go bridge and something else is wrong. I realize what happened. Unfortunate. So as you can see, I have the same amount of polygons, but the position of everything is off. Here I have 2, here I have 1. So I should have actually noticed that before. But what do we do in such a situation? Okay, it's not really a big deal. Good that this ran wrong, so I can show you how to do this correctly. So I have 1 there, and then 2 in the center. Okay, so 1 cut here, 2 cuts there, delete the center, and there we are. Now then, for example, this we can scale a little bit, maybe move this forward, squeeze this. There we have now again a nice smooth loop cut. So I will rotate this to there, maybe a little bit more scaled. E in object mode, obviously. Bring this one down. E, ZZ, scale, AA, Control N. And now I'll make a copy. Escape, hide it. So in case this doesn't work out, I can go back to the original object. Because the nice thing is this is an object mode, so I can rotate the object and then work with the local space instantly. But the moment I join these two together, it's gone. So it's good to actually keep a backup mesh. And now let's try this again. Bridge. See, now it works better. And let's see, number of cuts. 2. Okay. Spacebar, shade smooth, and let's add a sub D of 2 or so. Let's take a look, and there you see now we have much nicer transitions. Few things to consider. My handle is round, but then this loop cut is linear, and what bugs me is actually this point. You can clearly see that this is a flat fillet. That's not what I want, so GG. Move this forward, GG, move this forward. So you see I'm creating arcs. That actually helps now the mesh to flow much nicer. Also here again, I work on a full model, so economically it might make sense to simply do it this way. So now we only have one side. And let's take a look from the front. Yeah, this arcs, that's okay. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I would say this is good. Maybe tick in there. And you see here in the back there we have the same GG. Okay, GG 1 point and GG next point. Good game this point. And just make sure that you have nice and even distances. So when I bring these very close together, just keep in mind we start pinching that surface. So nice and even spacings. So also there, having talked about spacing, I will do the same there and there. Nice, and you can see how the flows actually get pretty good. Maybe they can actually go a little bit more inwards. That looks too much like a G1. Here maybe a tick. Okay, nice. So that was basically what I wanted to show you about how you can take a very basic object in Blender and then create a transition between two objects by simply putting that into the same mesh or same object, so that we can then in the mesh modeling actually sculpt the transitions by hand. The next secret ingredient to the awesome soup, everybody should know what video I'm referencing, is edge crease. So what can we do with edge creases? For example, let's say I select maybe this edge and I select these edges and maybe these edges, Shift E1 plus, and I crease them. And crease this one as well. And there, you see now we're sharpening that part. When you work with edge creases in Blender, try to go with full crease or no crease, because Fusion only allows you to do the same, full crease and no crease. And if we only take a look at this, it looks quite nice. But then if we only take a look at this, then we can see here, whoa, what's going on there. So it's not really ideal. Maybe bring this further down and you see that problem simply remains. So it's not really useful in that case the way how we have it there, but we can actually be a little bit creative. Let's say we go zig zig zig, so that way there we have an interesting other structure, and then because we're pinching that surface, however, it stretches there a little bit. So because we're now working with creases, maybe we can start getting away from this idea of the end being a perfect circle. So maybe let's try to be a little bit more explorative. And for example here, let's see if this works. This will actually also be very uncomfortable, so probably for down here, let's get rid of it. So Shift E -1. Okay, and then there, now we can see, is there maybe with the amount of geometry and points I have, a possibility given to create maybe an interesting structure or something. What happens if we select this whole thing and remove it? So we only do it actually along the side. See that? Maybe it could look a little bit more serious, not too goofy or experimental. So maybe let's go to here. There you see I did something similar, just as a side crease, and at the end I continued this. Keep in mind this crease in Blender is super sharp. When we bring this into Fusion and we crease it, it will also be very sharp. However, in Fusion we can also then later fillet that crease. So maybe let's try to do this with this one. I simply will export this as an OBJ and let's say test. Okay, no modifier ZY. Okay, export, and then in Fusion let's make a new file, T-splines, insert, There's the test meters. Perfect. Convert. Now we only have half a model, not a big deal. We can go to mirror duplicate, select your object, select your mirror plane. Again, another reason why it's so important in Blender to work with the symmetry of your scene, because you see then the same will apply to Fusion. Select this one, double click, click this one, and then crease. There, exactly the same result. Finish form. So, in general terms, this was a nice and even polygon model. So you see that the resulting NURBS surfaces are pretty clean. There's no craziness. And this is a surface. So let's go to patch. And now we can select this one, 1 millimeter, or 5, or 10. Okay. And there, you see, this works, for example, a lot more predictable and interesting. Talking about the fillets, you see the fillet size actually changed there. Let's double click this one and say chord length. That actually will make then the fillet always the same across. So this actually looks better. The other one was too uncontrolled. Okay, see? So let's go back to Blender. Let's take a look what I have here. There's a different flow, how I creased actually the different sets. I have something here and there, -1. So I'm only creasing, for example, the end. That could work, for example, or as you can the way how I have it here, Shift E. So I start with a loop from an edge, run through the mesh, and go back to an edge. What actually happens if we crease those? Okay, yeah, it will pinch like crazy. So you see via the creasing, I'm just sharpening these faces, but actually that brings up one interesting idea. What happens if we apply this to all those? Yeah, okay. This actually starts to look more like a hairdryer out of medieval times. Can be used as a self-defense weapon. So let's undo all this. This looks silly. Okay, but maybe something like this could be interesting and one point to be used. What happens if maybe we go with this one in addition? Maybe there. Yeah. Oh, what about this? See, that makes a little bit more sense. A nice crisp line. The line also flows through here, so there's a limitation with the creasing of subdivided surfaces. T-spline will give you the same swoop result, and that's in case that's not something you want. And then actually we simply might have to crease this one. What about actually those faces recrease? Yeah, then here this makes no sense. So for example, something like this could be okay. Okay, let's go to the next page, and instead of creasing something, we maybe work actually with the manipulating actually the edges. So you see here I have kind of like a star shape, and then I moved parts in and I twisted the whole surface. So how did I create this one? It's actually pretty simple. Let me go back to a basic model. Let's go to here, Shift D, Escape M, go to there, click, 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 click. How many points do I have? Not enough. So sub D of 1, apply. here the center stuff I will dump. Okay, so we will actually make use of the proportional editing and hiding geometry, which is a pretty nifty way to make sure that you do not select something you do not want to work with. So you see, I will, besides those, I will select a certain set of points. Also very easy would be kind of like loop cut, loop cut, loop cut, and loop cut. And then here I have to make sure I do not select those edges. Okay, perfect. So this is good. Now when I turn on proportional editing and scale, you see everything is being affected, also the black lines, which is not what I want. So I can press Ctrl I, see that hides, inverts the selection, and I press H and hide everything else. Now I can go ahead and make sure you selected everything there. And now you could go ahead and say S and maybe in my case Shift X, so it doesn't scale along the x-axis. I only scale these points inwards, maybe like this. Okay, let's take a look, and there we are. So you see, by hiding the other points, they are not affected actually by the proportional editing. Pretty nice. And now I can go ahead and maybe, if I want to add a twist, select maybe one front ring. I'm also in boundary box, RX, and I can twist this, and then via the mouse wheel decide how much does it influence. Best way is actually to do this when seeing it from here. So now when I rotate it, I can really make sure that I will rotate this one till this one is nice and centered. Let's zoom in a little bit more, and I would say there. Okay, so you see there's a little twist on it. Maybe not enough. Maybe let's do this one more time. Yeah, let's say maybe this one. Okay, and it feels a little bit more. Okay, and obviously also be aware of how the different fall-off curves actually will impact the proportional editing. So that's basically the way how you can then create these structures by increasing the density of your mesh, and then we can select certain edges or lines, and then via proportional editing, scale and rotate them, and then via the show and hide function of individual mesh parts, we can include or exclude them from that operation. Next very tasty ingredient are structures. Some of you had references of structures, dots, kind of like for grip, but actually also some line work, just instead of working with pressed elements or something, or textures, create a visual look by adding something on the surface. So what you see here is you see I have a nice set of lines running over my hairdryer. There are these mesh lines, and how did I create this? Actually, very simple. So let's go to here. Cursor is centered. Let's take a look. Wave trim. Did I remove these dots? Yes, I removed the dots. Okay. So let's say I have a certain pattern or pattern of holes for the air vents, and maybe this was actually my original intent. These lines all run maybe to air vents at the end. So how can I do this? Let's create a ring, maybe with 12 points. It's maybe a centimeter And then edit mode, let's rotate this one, move it up, maybe to there. And then from a side view, I'll move this one where it will start to match. Okay, so edit mode, E and X, scale it up, E and X, and E and, sorry, not X, S, my fault, but actually scale along X, E, S, or X. I'm getting confused. Obviously, you extrude along the x-axis and you can scale it. So let's select this one and there as try to capture the shapes a little bit. Okay, so AA, Control N, make sure that everything nicely is also aligned so all your faces look to the outside. And I will now add a shrink wrap modifier, project, negative and positive, and select this one as the object, the target. So one problem you might see there already, what's going on with this triangle? Well, it's because actually this design is applied onto the handle, including on the body, including the handle. So they're all gone. Okay, so this is easier now for the software to calculate. Okay, perfect. So this kind of looks crabby. That's because it doesn't have enough points. So let's add a sub D modifier in front. Okay, perfect. So what we will do now, we make a copy of this one, and then I will bring this onto a different layer. And then I will go maybe into edit mode. Let's apply this one. Okay, so now I can go ahead and every second line, if I want to, I could select. Or I could also say, well, you, no, not you. Zack, 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 zack. Those actually I all want to delete. Yeah. So I maintain having all these points and all these lines. So again, you see, getting the structure I want is about poly count. So let's go back to our original object here. You see these lines still project nicely onto it. Pretty good. So also there I can add a sub D modifier at the front, so it nicely shifts or lines up. AA, Control N. Okay. So on the trick now to extrude something along these lines is add a skin modifier, and then you might see something like this. Don't get a heart attack, it's all cool. So we will select maybe all the points there, and the skin modifier we then say to all these points mark as root, and that means from that root every line that's connected to a point which we marked as a root will have a noodle extruded along it. AA, select everything, because we also have to set the radius, maybe 0.01, enter, zoom in, and there we are. Now we have some interesting dots. The problem is when we actually do the sub D, you see things can get shorter. So we have to maybe overbuild a little bit or line up things. I had a plate here at the beginning. Where did it go to? There. Ching. So let's say along this plate or plane, I would like to line up all these points. So what I can easily do here is just adjust everything so it matches. So I'm paying attention to how the noodles actually line up to the plane. Okay, see now, this actually looks a lot cleaner. If we select this and then add another Boolean modifier, sub-D modifier at the end, we get a nice soft result. And there now you see we have nice extrusions flowing along the object. Something similar is easily possible in Fusion as well if you project something on a sketch, but what's more difficult in Fusion to do is to project something that is circularly around something and project it onto the object, which is why structures like this I prefer doing in Blender via the shrink wrap modifier, because I can kind of like modify or model a pillow around my object and then shrink it down and use that as a reference. Because even this stuff we can actually export. So the last sub-D I do not want. The first sub-D, let's take a look. Yeah, that's fine. And then the shrink wrap and of course the skin modifier. This we want to export. Noodles. So selection only and apply modifier. And Z up, Y forward. Fusion. New design. Insert. Where are the noodles? Properly export them to the wrong area. Yes, I did. Export noodles. Open meter. Okay. And now I can convert. That will take a moment. It's a pretty dense mesh, but Fusion and T-splines will do this quite accurately. So the T-spline mesh is actually pretty dense, you see with all these points, but the nice thing is later when we click finish form, and hold on, can only be a matter of hours. There it is. So I mean it took a little bit of time because it's a pretty intensive task. So what we can do if, for example, something doesn't line up, well, we're not limited to leave stuff the way how they are. Let's say I make a sketch there, and I make a sketch maybe, let's say there. Okay, stop sketch. So these are objects, so I could say extrude this one there and cut all the stuff out. Let's say there should be an air vent. Okay. I currently have drawn in the first sketch just a line. If I draw a rectangle, then I can clip the front as well. If this would be a surface, then I could trim it. So if you work with a solid, because you see those are all solids, we would have to extend the sketch a little bit. I did this with this rectangle, so I will leave the other sketch as is. And let's zoom into here, and you see, and doesn't look necessarily very nice, but now, well, we can easily select all these edges and then later all at once, maybe 0.5, I don't know, 0.75, 7, 6, 5, yeah, let's say this is fine. Okay, so we can round actually these objects. So let's go back to Blender, and there's my object. I will remove this cap. I will export this one there. Let's go back. Actually, I can include this one there. Create noodles meter there. Finish form. I do not go back to this T-spline where I have all these noodles in because that one takes a long time to calculate. So I make a new T-spline object and finish form. Perfect. And let's cap and stitch. Okay, and now we can go to model space, modify, and say U, cut by all those. Okay. And there we are, you see, perfect. So if we zoom in here, there we see we get nice edge roundings. If we can sculpt it the way how we need, now this works as well. For example, here, this was visually tried to be aligned up. We can do this, but if we have later to trim certain shapes, then you can see I would model this one with the opening. I just build it big, and then in Fusion I trim and then round all the edges. And then, as you can see, we can create quite complicated structures pretty simply. This is another showcase to show you why actually I do not say Fusion is an application and Blender is an application. For me, both are just one application. They just offer different tools, and then the beauty is really in trying to combine them as efficiently as possible to solve your creative problems. Back to the Blender file, there's one other thing I would like to demonstrate to you. Where's my handle? There's my handle. So let's say on this handle I would like to have somewhere some buttons, structures, dots or so for grip. So we'll maybe make a plane. RX9 there. Scale this, bring this down in object mode, we rotate it there, maybe one more, maybe two more. Let's bring this down, and then I will adjust this a little bit. Actually, I should not have done those first. I should actually adjust more the boundary. And then I can actually add the loop cuts. You see the loop cuts are now nicely flowing. There. Okay. So what can this one be useful for? Well, this I will shrink wrap onto this surface, and then negative, yeah, there it is, perfect. Okay, and it currently sits on the surface, so that's okay. At the same position where the mesh is, so Shift S and then set the 3 cursor. We will add a small cube, or you can import your quad ball. Let's make this one tiny. Let's say like a millimeter. Try to really make sure you work with dimensions, because this is a small cube and now this is a huge cube, but it's only a millimeter cube. Size can be deceiving. Maybe Shift Control 1 or 2. Give it a little bit rounder mesh, or add a modifier. And you might have guessed it exactly. I will parent this one to this mesh, because then with this mesh there, position on a vertex or a face, I can then create a structure on that face. 1 millimeter, way too tiny. Let's say 3 millimeters, which is probably pretty big, but visually you see this better. Goodie. So now what we can do, well, we can subdivide smooth, so we have more space, or sorry, more faces, so I can see more. And there we are. You see, very easy way to get a structure onto there. So how do we now get this onto the other side? Well, I can select this one and add a mirror plane there. But now I need something to mirror over. And my handle is perfectly centered, so I could actually use simply the mirror plane along the y-axis. Yeah. So now I have it on each side. Good. I would like to maybe move actually these dots a little bit more into the mesh. So there are multiple ways how we can do this. This is the surface we projected onto the handle, and here's the surface offset, 0.1. It's gone because I moved it, I think 10 centimeters or something away. So 0.01, and you see it gets closer, and 0.001. It's pretty close, 0.0001. It's even closer, and let's make this a negative. And now you see it's inside, whoops, inside my handle. Let's press Alt B to make a cut section view. Now we can see where it is. And maybe let's work with these values there. Ah, perfect. So this way, instead of having a half circle, I can actually just have an ellipse sticking through. Or not an ellipse, I mean less than half a hemisphere. Perfect. Shade smooth, and there you see, very, very easy. Let's repeat this exercise, and I would like to wrap this one maybe around the top area. And again, this is not done to look good, but just as an exercise so you see how creative the stuff can work. So I rotated my mesh in object mode, I position it, and I will try to create a pillow, or like a, think about a sock, that is as closely fitting as possible. So there. I will add one, delete this one, and then E, and then local space, extrude this one, E, and then local space, extrude, and move, mirror this over, shrink wrap onto that one, project, positive and negative. It should all work fine, and it does. Okay, let's add maybe some loop cuts so we get squares. So when you do something like this, you really want to pay attention to, if you want to have an even pattern, that, well, obviously you need to have even square faces. So you see now these faces are a little bit more closer to being a square, and maybe there. Okay, perfect. So literally I can do then the same there as well. Shift D, Alt P, clear parent and keep transformation, because I have to move this one to where that one is. Cursor to selected, selection to cursor, Shift select, Control P, and then faces. Whoa, what happened? Ah, scale. This has no scale, or it has a scale. Hold on. Now it's a uniform scale, but this does not have a uniform scale. So what we'll do is select this one, Control A, apply scale there. Because those we can scale in object mode and then they're instanced over it. And if we want to have a nice transition or play there, turn this one on, wrong curve, this way. Move this out a little bit. Okay. You see it's actually inside and it's moved to there, and the rest of the mesh is to the outside, and that is the reason why I turned on positive and negative direction. And you see then this way you can create nice flows. Okay, so how do we get all this stuff over to Fusion? What we need to do is, I will turn this one off, so I have very basic boxes again. Select the object and maybe this one, Shift D, make a copy. And then here, select this one, so the copy, apply, make real. Didn't I select it? There, I must not have. Delete, delete. And then all this we can select. Export, OBJ. Yep, that's all good. Later. And then in Fusion, we do exactly the same step. We just bring, what was the name? We bring that stuff over. What did I name this one? Export noodles. I'm getting really hungry. Didn't have breakfast yet. Noodles, open. There. And then convert all this and finish form. These are not perfect circles, but honestly, if you create a structure that's that tiny, we can get away with this. Or we'll use the T-spline quad ball. But yeah, so you see, pretty simple. As a quick demo, what happens if maybe you have a handle and you would like to get the handle geometry into Blender, put a structure on, and then get the structure from Blender back to Fusion? So let's make a quick model there. So we will make a line. How big is this? 60 centimeters. Let's say, oh no, it's millimeters. Let's go 6 centimeters. Okay. Let's make a baby doll hair dryer there. Okay. And spline. No, not line. I said spline. There, click there. Okay, good. So I know this object has actually a length of 60 millimeters. Because there's one trick. Now we bring this over to memorize. So let's do a revolve of this object. Okay. So in this now I will not 3D print. I can use that function for it, or right click. No, I cannot do it. Right click. I can go into the browser, save as STL. But sometimes that's also why I simply go 3D print, because I can only select one object. Hide, don't send to any output. Click OK. Then it asks you where you want to save it. So let's say this is the fusion body. Okay, and what's this one? That's 10 millimeters. So in Blender now. If I go File, Import, STL, there's my model. And it is huge, but the position is correct. You see, the only thing that's wrong is actually the dimension. So meters, we change into millimeters, and there we are. Done. Pretty nice. So, proof of concept. Let's do this really quickly. Something there and there. Okay. Scale this down there. Let's extrude these two out. And there. Okay. Let's project this one then onto the mesh. Shrink wrap. Project positive and negative. Okay. And use sub D on top so we have more points. Let's apply this one. Perfect. Okay, so this one, export. Back to the future fusion. And selection only, Z up, Y forward. In Fusion. Then we go create, insert, and cross fingers, and ta-da! Perfect match. See? Nice. Another reason why I like working with both programs together. You see, it doesn't really matter what program you work in, you can easily transfer stuff. Endpoint will always be Fusion because Blender is not a CAD application, but for concept development and creating structures, which are just too difficult for parametric applications, or sculpting organic shapes, Blender is perfect, and we can always feed stuff to Fusion. And this way, if we need to build something around something, a structure, we can just from Fusion bring it over, do the job in Blender, and then bring it back, and it will all snap into place. That's the beauty about it.